The message came without warning. It cut through the silence of deep space and arrived at every human colony, every station, and every ship scattered across the stars. The transmission was clear. The meaning was simple: surrender or die. High Ambassador Velthrix appeared in the holographic display. He was tall, almost 3 meters, and his body was made of living crystal. Light moved through him like blood through veins. His species, the Velkari, had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall like waves on a shore. They had crushed rebellions before most species learned to use fire. Humans of Earth, the ambassador began. His voice was cold and smooth like polished stone. The Galactic Council has observed your expansion into the stars. We have watched you build your ships. We have seen your weapons. We have studied your nature. Paused. The crystal patterns in his face shifted, forming what might have been a smile. You are young. You are reckless. You are dangerous. The Council has decided that humanity must be contained before you become a threat to galactic peace. The terms were simple. Humanity had 40 solar cycles to dismantle all military ships and weapons. They would surrender their faster-than-light technology. They would accept protection under Council law, which meant they could never leave their home system again. They would become a controlled species, watched and managed like animals in a cage. 312 species have received this message before you, Velthrix continued. All of them accepted. All of them now live in peace under our guidance. You will do the same. The hologram flickered and showed something new. Ships. Thousands of them. They waited at the edge of the Sol system like wolves outside a village. 7,000 capital ships, each one large enough to hold a small city. Their weapons could crack moons. Their shields could stop asteroids. One such ship could destroy everything humanity had built in space. 7,000 was not a fleet. It was a message. You have 40 cycles, the ambassador said. We await your answer. The transmission ended in Geneva, inside the Great Hall of the United Terran Assembly. Silence filled the room like water filling a sinking ship. Representatives from every nation on Earth sat frozen in their seats. Leaders from the Mars colonies stared at blank screens. Commanders from the orbital stations forgot to breathe. Secretary General Alina Vasquez stood at the center of the hall. She was 63 years old. Her hair was gray, pulled back in a simple style. Her face showed the kind of calm that comes from surviving too many crises to count. She had led humanity through the water wars. She had negotiated peace between Earth and the outer colonies. She had buried 2 children and kept working the next day. She watched the recording play again on the main screen. The ambassador's crystal face. The fleet of ships. The countdown that would end with humanity's freedom or humanity's death. Then she did something strange. She laughed. It was not nervous laughter. It was not the wild laughter of someone losing their mind. It was calm and knowing, like a grandmother, watching children play a game she had mastered long ago. The representative stared at her. Admiral Chenwei, commander of the Terran Space Force, raised an eyebrow. Defense Minister Okonkwo leaned forward in his chair. Nobody understood, Madame Secretary, the French representative said carefully. Perhaps the stress has affected No, Vasquez said. She was still smiling. I am perfectly clear in my thoughts. I laugh because this has happened before? Admiral Chen asked. We have never met alien life until 50 years ago. I am not talking about aliens. Vasquez walked slowly across the floor. Her footsteps echoed in the silent hall. I am talking about ultimatums. Demands for surrender. Threats of destruction if we do not obey. She stopped at the main display console and began typing commands. In 1945, the Empire of Japan received an ultimatum. Surrender or face complete destruction. They had seen the bomb that fell on Hiroshima. They knew what was coming. And still, many of their leaders wanted to fight. The screen changed. Old photographs appeared. Cities in ruins. Mushroom clouds rising into gray skies. We almost destroyed ourselves many times, Vasquez continued. The Cold War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Kashmir Exchange. Every time someone looked at humanity and said, "You cannot survive this. You must surrender. You must accept control." And every time, we found another way. She turned back to face the representatives. The council thinks they are threatening a young species, a primitive species, a species that has never faced real danger. Her smile faded into something harder, something older. They do not understand what we are. What are we? Minister Okonkwo asked quietly. Survivors Vasquez answered. We did not climb out of the caves because the universe was kind to us. We survived ice ages that lasted thousands of years. We survived plagues that killed half our population. We survived wars that burned entire continents. And we survived ourselves, which was the hardest enemy of all. She looked at Admiral Chen. Send him the Yalta file. The Admiral blinked. Madame Secretary, that file contains. I know what it contains. Vasquez returned to her seat at the center of the hall. Send it, with one message attached. What message? The Secretary General folded her hands on the table. Her eyes were steady. Her voice was clear. We have dealt with ultimatums before. The transmission was sent. The data packet flew across the darkness of space toward the waiting fleet. Inside it was a history lesson. Inside it was a warning. High Ambassador Velthrix received the file 12 hours later. His crystalline face showed no emotion as he opened it. He expected surrender. He expected begging. He expected the same fear he had seen in 300 other species. Instead, he found photographs of atomic fire. He found records of a species that had come within minutes of ending itself. Not once, but dozens of times. He found statistics of wars that killed millions, famines that killed millions more, diseases that swept across continents like wildfire. And he found that humanity had not broken. They had not surrendered. They had not asked for mercy. They had gotten angry. They had rebuilt. And they had become stronger. The ambassador closed the file. For the first time in 3 centuries, he felt something strange in his crystal heart. He did not yet understand what it was, but he would learn it was doubt. High Ambassador Velthrix sat in his private chamber aboard the flagship Eternal Light. The walls were made of living crystal, grown from his own body over centuries. They pulsed with soft colors as his mood shifted. Right now, they were dark blue, almost black. The color of confusion. The human file lay open before him in holographic display. He had read it 7 times. He had ordered his analysts to verify every piece of data. He had hoped to find lies or exaggeration. He found neither. The humans had documentation of everything. Every war. Every famine. Every disaster. They kept careful records of their own suffering. They studied their own failures. They remembered their dead ambassador. His aide, a younger Velkari named Trixon, entered the chamber. The council awaits your report. Tell them I need more time. They have asked 3 times already. Velthrix waved a crystalline hand. The holographic display expanded, showing a map of Earth through the ages. Ice covered entire continents. Then the ice retreated, and green spread like fire across the land. Then the ice returned. Again and again. Do you see this? He asked his aide. Trixon studied the display. Climate patterns. The planet experienced severe changes. Severe. Velthrix made a sound that might have been laughter. Their planet tried to kill them. Over and over. The cold came and destroyed everything they built. Then it retreated and they rebuilt. Then the cold came again. Pulled up another file. Images of small creatures with fur hiding in caves, making fire with sticks. The ancestors of modern humans. Most species would have died. Most species did die, but these creatures survived. They learned to make clothing from animal skins. They learned to store food. They learned to work together or freeze alone. The display shifted again. Cities rising from ruins. Hospitals being built. Children going to school while soldiers still fought in distant lands. The Second World War, Velthrix said quietly. They killed 60 million of their own kind. 60 million. And then they stopped, rebuilt their cities, and within one generation, they were sending machines to their moon. Trixon-esque crystal patterns flickered. That seems... impossible. It should be impossible. Any normal species would have collapsed, would have given up, would have begged for help, or died in silence. The ambassador closed the display. But humans are not normal. The edge of the Sol system. The Council fleet waited. Admiral Crixtal commanded 7,000 ships from the bridge of his vessel. The Eternal Judgment. He was not Velkari, but Thoraxa, massive creature with 4 arms and skin like armored stone. His species were warriors. They had conquered 100 worlds before joining the Council. He was not worried about humans. Small ships, he said, studying the tactical display. Primitive weapons. Weak shields. This will be easy. His sensor officer, a thin creature with multiple eyes, looked up from his station. Admiral, we have lost contact with Probe 7. Mechanical failure. Send another yes, Admiral. But Probe 8 also went silent. Then Probe 9. Then Probes 10 through 15 all at once. Crixtal leaned forward in his command chair. Show me the last transmissions. The screen displayed static. No explosions. No weapons fire. The probes simply stopped sending data, as if something had reached out and quietly turned them off. Admiral, the sensor officer said, all forward probes are now silent. We are blind beyond the asteroid belt. On the human side of that invisible line, Admiral Chen Wei stood aboard the TSS Defiance. The ship was not large by Council standards. It was old, rebuilt from a colony transport vessel. But it carried something the Council had never seen. Last probe eliminated, his tactical officer reported. They are blind. Good. Chen Wei allowed himself a small smile. Begin Phase 2, around the solar system. Hidden in asteroids and moons and the dark spaces between worlds, human installations came alive. They were not weapons. Not exactly. They were something stranger. Project Fenrir had begun 30 years ago, when humanity first learned about the Council. The scientists who designed it understood something important. Humans would never match the Council in firepower. They would never build bigger ships or stronger shields. They needed a different kind of advantage. They found it in the cold. Space was already cold. Absolute zero, the temperature where all movement stops, was the natural state of the universe. But the Council species came from warm worlds. Their technology expected warmth. Their ships were designed to hold heat in, not survive when heat was taken away. The Fenrir installations were thermal siphons. They could drain heat from targeted areas of space. They could create pockets of cold so intense that metal became brittle, engines failed, and life support died. Humanity had weaponized winter itself. Secretary General Vasquez watched the reports come in from her office in Geneva. The Council probes were gone. Phase 2 was ready. The trap was set. Do you think they will come? Asked Minister Okonkwo, standing beside her. They will come. Species like the Council do not understand anything except power. They gave us an ultimatum because that has always worked before. When it does not work, they will try force. And if force does not work? Vasquez looked out the window. The sky was dark with winter clouds. Snow was falling on the old city, covering ancient streets with white. Then they will learn what our ancestors learned 10,000 years ago. The cold does not care about power. The cold does not care about empires. The cold only respects those who have learned to survive it. We learned. They did not. And when they come for us, they will discover that the universe gave humanity the greatest teacher possible. What teacher is that? Death. Vasquez's voice was calm. Death by freezing. Death by starvation. Death by disease. Death by our own hands. We have faced death so many times that we have become friends with it. We know its face. We understand its rules. She turned back to the tactical display. The Council has never truly faced death. They have controlled the galaxy for so long that they have forgotten what it means to struggle. They have forgotten what it means to survive. In the dark of space, Admiral Crixtal made his decision. All ships forward. We will teach these humans the meaning of council law. 7,000 vessels began to move. Their engines lit up the darkness like a river of stars flowing towards Seoul. They expected easy victory. They expected surrender within days. They did not expect the cold, and the cold was waiting, the council. Armada entered the Sol system like a wave of steel and fire. 7,000 ships moved in perfect formation, their engines burning bright against the black void. Admiral Crixtal watched from his command throne as the fleet passed the orbit of Neptune, then Uranus, then Saturn. Nothing opposed them. "Where are their ships?" Crixtal demanded. His forearms gripped the arms of his throne. "Where is their fleet?" "Sensors show no military presence, Admiral." The officer's multiple eyes scanned the displays. Earth's orbital space is empty. No defense platforms. No weapons, satellites, nothing. This was wrong. Every species the Council had ever threatened put up some kind of defense. Even the weakest civilizations would position their ships between the invaders and their homeworld. It was instinct. It was nature, but humanity had done nothing. The fleet passed Jupiter. The great red eye of the gas giant watched them like an ancient god. "Still no resistance? Still no contact. They've surrendered," said one of Crixtal's commanders, a Valkyrie named Sorn. "They saw our fleet and chose to accept our terms. Without a message? Without formal surrender?" Crixtal shook his massive head. "No, this is something else. Perhaps they are hiding on the planet's surface. Waiting for ground assault? Perhaps—" "Ah!" The Admiral studied the tactical display. Earth was now visible, a small blue dot growing larger with each passing hour. All ships maintain formation. Increase scanner sensitivity. Something is wrong here. The first warning came from a ship at the edge of the formation. The captain of the Void Seeker, a medium cruiser, sent a confused message to the flagship. "Admiral, we are experiencing technical problems. Our engine temperature is dropping. "Explain." "I cannot explain, Admiral. The heat is simply ... leaving. Our engineers report that the reactor core is cooling without cause. Life support systems are struggling to maintain temperature." Crixtal opened a channel to his chief engineer. "What could cause this?" "Nothing, Admiral. Space is cold, but our ships are designed to handle cold. Our shields trap heat inside. There is no natural force that could." The engineer stopped speaking. "What is it?" "Admiral, I am reading temperature drops across 17 ships now, and the rate is increasing." On the Void Seeker, the captain watched frost form on his control panels. His crew began to shiver. Their breath became visible in the air. The temperature, which should have been comfortable, dropped 10 degrees in 2 minutes, then 20 degrees, then 40. "Emergency heating," the captain shouted. "Full power to life support." But the heating systems could not keep up. The cold was not coming from outside the ship. It was as if the heat was being pulled out of the vessel by an invisible hand. Metal groaned as it contracted. Screens cracked. Crew members collapsed as their bodies began to freeze. "What is happening?" Crixtal roared. On his display, ship after ship reported the same impossible problem. The cold was spreading through the formation like a disease. High Ambassador Velthrix watched from his chamber. His crystalline body did not feel temperature like organic beings, but his instruments showed him the truth. The Council fleet was dying. "They have built something," he whispered. Something in the dark, around the solar system. The Fenrir installations reached full power. Hidden in asteroids, buried on frozen moons, drifting in the spaces between planets, they worked in perfect harmony. They were not weapons in the traditional sense. They did not fire beams or launch missiles. They simply took heat. Thermal siphons, the human scientists called them. They could target a region of space and drain the energy from it. The heat did not go anywhere. It simply stopped existing. The machines created pockets of cold so intense that the laws of physics seemed to bend. The Council ships were not prepared. Their civilization had never faced such an attack. They built shields against lasers and missiles. They built armor against kinetic weapons. but they had never built defenses against the simple, patient death of freezing. Admiral Chenway's transmission reached the Council fleet as the first ships began to go dark. "This is Admiral Chenway of the Terran Space Force." His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Your species evolved on warm worlds. You have never known true cold. You have never watched your breath freeze in the air. You have never felt your fingers stop working because the blood has retreated to protect your heart." On the eternal judgment, Crixtal listened. Ice was forming on the walls of his bridge. His crew, cold-blooded thorax who needed warmth to survive, were slowing down. Their movements became sluggish. Their thoughts became confused. "We are different," Chenway continued. "Our ancestors survived ice ages that covered half our world. They lived in caves while blizzards raged outside. They learned to endure cold that would have killed any other species." The Admiral tried to give orders. His voice came out as a croak. His arms would not move properly. "The cold does not kill," Chenway said. "It preserves those who are patient. It destroys those who are unprepared. And Admiral, you are not prepared." 40% of the Council fleet died in 4 hours. Some ships exploded as their reactors failed. Some simply went dark and drifted, filled with frozen corpses. Some managed to restart their engines and flee back toward the edge of the system. Carrying survivors who would never forget what they had experienced, Crixtal was among the survivors. His ship escaped the killing zone, damaged but still functional. As his crew slowly warmed, as feeling returned to his stone-like skin, he sent a message to High Ambassador Velthrix. "What are they?" he asked. "What are these humans?" The ambassador had no answer. For 12,000 years, the Council had ruled the galaxy. They had defeated every enemy. They had crushed every rebellion. They had never, in all that time, lost a fleet engagement, until now. On Earth, Secretary General Vasquez received the reports. 40% of the enemy fleet destroyed. The remaining ships in retreat. Minimal human casualties. "We won," Minister Okonkwo said. There was wonder in his voice. "We actually won. We won a battle," Vasquez corrected. "The Council controls 40,000 ships. They will send more. Many more. Then we will freeze them too. Perhaps." Vasquez walked to the window. Outside, snow continued to fall on Geneva. "But we cannot freeze the entire galaxy. Eventually, we will need another strategy." "What strategy?" The Secretary General was quiet for a long moment. She watched the snow cover the ancient streets, turning the world white and silent. "We need them to understand," she finally said. "Not just that we can hurt them, but that we choose not to destroy them. Mercy means nothing from the weak, but mercy from the strong. That is a message even the Council cannot ignore." She turned back to face her minister. "Prepare the Lazarus Protocol. It is time to show them just how much mercy we are offering." The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. The Council had attacked the humans. The Council had lost. For the first time in 8,000 years, a species had defeated a Council fleet. Not through luck. Not through some strange natural advantage. They had built weapons the Council did not understand, and used them with deadly precision. On 100,000 worlds, people whispered the news to each other. Species that had surrendered to Council ultimatums generations ago suddenly remembered what freedom felt like. Species that had never known freedom began to wonder what it might taste like. The Council was not just angry, they were afraid. High Ambassador Velthrix addressed the full Council assembly on their capital world. The chamber was vast, large enough to hold representatives from every member species. Crystalline pillars reached toward a ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness. This room had seen the rise and fall of empires. It had witnessed 12,000 years of absolute power. Now it witnessed panic. "We must respond with overwhelming force," demanded Admiral Vexler, a warrior from the Thornax species. "Send every ship we have. Burn their world to ash." "And if they freeze those ships too?" asked a representative from the Minari, a small furry species that specialized in diplomacy. "We lost 40% of our fleet without firing a single shot. Then we send more. We have 40,000 ships. They cannot stop all of them. Velthrix raised a crystalline hand for silence. We have received another message from the humans. The chamber fell quiet. The holographic display activated. Secretary General Elena Vasquez appeared before the assembled powers of the galaxy. She stood in a simple room. Behind her was a window showing falling snow. She wore plain clothes, no military uniform, no symbols of power. She looked like someone's grandmother, not the leader of a species that had just humiliated the greatest military force in known space. Representatives of the Galactic Council, she began. I am not here to threaten you. I am here to tell you a story. For the next hour, she spoke. She told them about human history. Not the wars and weapons, but the survival. She told them about the Black Death, a disease that killed half of Europe and left the survivors to rebuild from ruins. She told them about the Great Famine of the 14th century, when the weather changed and crops failed and millions died of hunger. Every century, she said, something tried to destroy us. Disease, weather, war, each other. We came close to extinction more times than we can count, and every time we survived. Not because we were stronger than the threat, but because we refused to give up. Her old eyes looked directly into the recording device, as if she could see every council representative watching. You sent us an ultimatum. Surrender or die. We have heard those words before. We said them to ourselves during the Cold War, when two nations pointed nuclear weapons at each other and waited for someone to blink. We stood at the edge of our own extinction, and we chose to step back. Not because we were weak, because we were strong enough to choose peace. The display changed. It showed a map of the galaxy, with council homeworlds marked in red. Now I will tell you something important, something you need to understand. Small blue dots appeared near each red marker. Dozens of them. Hundreds. For 30 years while you watched us, we watched you. We sent ships into your space. Tiny ships, unmanned, invisible. They carried devices similar to the ones that destroyed your fleet. Entropy bombs, we call them. They are positioned near the homeworld of every major council species. Murmurs of shock rippled through the council chamber. We could activate them now, Vasquez continued. Her voice remained calm. We could freeze your worlds the way we froze your ships. Your cities would go dark. Your people would die in the cold. It would take days, perhaps weeks. But in the end, you would be gone. She let the silence stretch. We will not do this. Admiral Vexler roared something incomprehensible. Other representatives shouted questions and accusations. Velthrix maintained a silence, watching the human leader with growing understanding. We will not do this, Vasquez repeated, because that is not who we are. We learned something during our long history of suffering. Vengeance does not end conflicts. It creates new ones. Power means nothing if you use it only to destroy. She stepped closer to the recording device. Thought you were threatening monsters. Primitive savages who would crumble under pressure? But we are not monsters. We are survivors. And survivors understand something that conquerors forget.
What is that?
Velthrix asked, though he knew she could not hear him. Mercy, Vasquez said, as if answering his question. Mercy is not weakness. Mercy is a choice made by those strong enough to destroy who choose not to. We are offering you mercy, not because we cannot hurt you, but because we do not want to become the kind of species that hurts others simply because we can. Vasquez stood alone in the frame. You have a choice? You can send your 40,000 ships. You can try to overwhelm our defenses through sheer numbers. Perhaps you will succeed. Perhaps you will burn our world and kill every human in existence. Her voice hardened slightly. But you will pay a price. Our entropy bombs will activate. Your homeworlds will freeze. Your civilizations will end. You will win, but you will inherit a galaxy of ashes. She relaxed again. Or you can negotiate, not as masters and slaves. As equals, we do not want your empire. We do not want your surrender. We want a seat at your table. We want the right to travel freely. We want you to stop giving ultimatums to developing species. That is all. The Minari representative asked in disbelief. That is all. You can choose war and mutual destruction. Or you can choose peace and share the galaxy with a new partner. Beska smiled, and for a moment she looked genuinely kind. We prefer peace. We have fought enough wars. But make no mistake. If you choose war, we will fight. We will fight until the last human is dead. And we will take as many of you with us as we possibly can. The recording ended. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives screamed at each other. Some demanded immediate attack. Others counseled caution. Some simply sat in stunned silence, trying to understand how everything they knew had changed in a single day. High Ambassador Velthrix remained still. His crystalline form reflected the chaos around him, but his mind was clear. The humans were not bluffing. He knew that now. They had proven they could hurt the council. They had proven they were willing to die rather than surrender. And most terrifying of all, they had proven they could show mercy. Species that could only destroy were predictable. Species that chose when to destroy and when to spare were unpredictable. For the first time in his long life, Velthrix faced an enemy he could not calculate, and somewhere in his ancient heart, he began to wonder if enemy was even the right word anymore. The Great Armada assembled at the edge of human space. 40,000 warships gathered from every corner of the galaxy. Dreadnoughts the size of mountains. Carriers holding millions of fighters. Destroyers, cruisers, and support vessels beyond counting. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Enough firepower to sterilize 1,000 worlds. Admiral Crystal commanded from a new flagship, the Eternal Vengeance. He had survived the freezing. He had watched his crew die around him. He had felt the impossible cold seep into his stone-like flesh. He would not underestimate the humans again. All ships report ready, his tactical officer announced. We await your command, Admiral. Crystal studied the display. The Sol system waited ahead, quiet and dark. Somewhere in that darkness, the human weapons were hiding. The entropy bombs that could steal heat itself. The invisible death that had killed so many of his warriors. Maintain position, he ordered. We wait for the Council's final decision. High Ambassador Velthrix stood before the Council Assembly for the third time in as many days. The debate had raged without pause. Some species demanded immediate attack. Others counseled negotiation. A few had quietly begun preparing their own governments for possible evacuation. The humans have made their offer, Velthrix said. Equality in exchange for peace. Mutual respect in exchange for survival. Equality. Admiral Vexler spat the word like poison. We are the Council. We do not negotiate with primitives. These primitives destroyed 40% of our fleet without losing a single ship. The ambassador's voice remained calm. These primitives have weapons positioned near every homeworld in Council space. These primitives chose not to use those weapons when they could have. They are bluffing. They must be. I do not believe they are. Velthrix turned to address the full assembly. I have studied their history. I have read their records. I've tried to understand what makes them different from every other species we have encountered. Paused, gathering his thoughts. Most species fear death. They will do almost anything to avoid it. When we threaten them, they surrender because survival is more important than pride. But humans have a different relationship with death. They have faced it so many times that they no longer fear it the same way. The chamber was quiet. They are willing to die, truly willing. It's not as warriors seeking glory, but as survivors protecting what they love. They will fight until the last one of them is gone. And they have made certain that if they fall, they will take our civilizations with them. So we should surrender to their demands? Vexler asked with disgust. Their demands are reasonable. Velthrix let that statement hang in the air. A seat at the council table. Free travel. No more ultimatums to developing species. They are not asking for tribute. They are not asking for territory. They are asking for respect. And if we give them this respect, what then? The ambassador's crystalline form shifted colors. Something that might have been hope flickered in his chest. Then perhaps we gain something we have never had before. An ally instead of a subject. A partner instead of a slave. species that chose peace when they could have chosen destruction. At the edge of the Sol system, the standoff continued. The Council Armada waited. The human defenses waited. Neither side moved. Neither side blinked then. One by one, human vessels began to appear. They decloaked from hidden positions throughout the system, small ships, fighters and drones and automated platforms. They were tiny compared to Council warships, mere insects beside giants. But there were millions of them, an endless swarm filling the darkness like stars being born. Admiral Chen Wei's transmission reached the Council fleet. This is your final chance to choose. War or peace, destruction or survival. We prefer peace, but we are prepared for war. Admiral Crystal stared at the tactical display. The human ships were everywhere. Each one probably carried some version of the freezing weapon. His fleet was surrounded by death itself. He had faced many enemies in his long career. He had never faced one that was willing to die rather than lose. He had never faced one that had positioned weapons to ensure mutual destruction even in defeat. These were not normal enemies. These were something new. 12 hours passed. The two fleets faced each other across the void. Neither fired, neither retreated. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Then High Ambassador Velthrix did something that had never been done in 12,000 years of Council history. He requested asylum, not for his species, for himself. His message reached the human flagship directly. I wish to speak with Secretary General Vasquez, face to face. No guards, no weapons, just two leaders trying to find a better way. The Council was stunned, abandoning his post, speaking directly to an enemy. These were crimes that could result in death. But Velthrix had studied the humans carefully. He understood now what they truly wanted. Not war, not victory, just a chance. The meeting took place on neutral ground, a small space station at the edge of the system. Velthrix arrived alone. Vasquez arrived alone. They sat across from each other in a bare room with no decoration, no symbols of power. You know, you could have destroyed us, Velthrix said. When your weapons were in position, before we knew what was happening, you could have ended the Council forever. Could have Vasquez agreed. We chose not to. Why? The old woman leaned back in her chair. For a moment, she looked very tired. Because that is not who we want to be. We spent too long fighting each other. Hurting each other, nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times. When we finally reached the stars, we promised ourselves something. We would be better. Not perfect, but better. Better how? We would only fight when we had no choice. We would offer mercy to enemies who deserve destruction. We would try, however hard it might be, to build bridges instead of walls. Velthrix was silent for a long moment. The Council has ruled for 12,000 years. We have never known defeat. We have never had to consider equality with a younger species. Then perhaps it is time to learn something new. Vasquez smiled gently. We are good teachers. We had to teach ourselves to stop killing each other. That was the hardest lesson of all. 3 months later, the Treaty of Ceres was signed. Humanity received a seat on the Council. Free travel through Council space. A new doctrine was established. No more ultimatums to developing species. Galaxy would grow together. It's not through conquest, but through cooperation. Admiral Chen Wei stood beside Secretary General Vasquez at the signing ceremony. Behind them, representatives from 100 species watched history unfold. They expected us to be monsters, Chen said quietly. Vasquez shook her head. No, they expected us to be victims. That was their first mistake. She signed the treaty with a pen made from the hull of the first ship humanity ever sent to the stars, a reminder of how far they had come. Their second mistake, she added, was thinking the cold made us cruel, just made us patient. High Ambassador Velthrix approached them after the ceremony. His crystalline form glowed with colors humans had never seen before, the Valkyrie expression of hope. I must ask, he said. The entropy bombs. Your weapons near our homeworlds. Will you remove them now that we have peace? Vasquez and Chen exchanged a look. There are no bombs, Chen admitted. We only had enough resources to build the Fenrir installations in our own system. The threat was a bluff. Velthric stared at them. A bluff? You risked the destruction of your species on a bluff? Not a bluff, Vasquez corrected. A calculated risk. We knew you would believe us because you could not afford not to believe. We knew you would choose negotiation because destruction was too terrible to risk. The ambassador was silent for a long moment. Then he made a sound that the translators could not process. It took the humans a moment to realize he was laughing. You truly are remarkable creatures, he said. Remarkable and terrifying. Vasquez smiled. We prefer remarkable. But we will accept terrifying if that is what keeps the peace. The galaxy had changed. The old order had ended, and humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through conquest, but through something far more powerful. The willingness to show mercy, the patience to wait for understanding, and the absolute refusal to surrender, no matter the odds. The cold had taught them well, and now they would teach the galaxy.